Just so everybody knows, we're still having some technical difficulties with one of the board members getting the audio to work, so please bear with us.
Can you hear me through my phone?
Success.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Back to
There we
roll
go.
call.
Director Hendrick,
Here from Grand Haven, Michigan.
Director Westbrook,
Here in Grand Haven, Michigan.
Director Witherell, absent. Chairperson Kieft, absent.
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Larry Kieft and Jerry Witherall for medical reasons.
I'll make the motion.
Second that.
Okay, now we vote. Roll call. Roll call vote.
Roll
Director
call.
Crum,
Yes.
Director Hendrick,
Yes.
Director Westbrook,
Yes.
Motion carries.
That's right. The next item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the meeting agenda. Any additions, deletions, questions, or approve the meeting agenda as it stands?
I'll make a motion to,
I'll second.
there's a little bit of a delay. I'll make a motion to amend the consent agenda or the agenda to move items F, 3, and 4 from the consent agenda to the general manager's report or to other business.
Okay. From you?
I'll second that.
Renee, call the roll.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Hendrick,
Yes.
Director Westbrook,
Yes.
motion carries.
We'll just make that item 5C and 5D.
Thank you, Dave. All right, at this time, this is one of two opportunities to hear public comments from the general public. We ask that each commenter provide their name and address for the record. For those of you that are on Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment, you can use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and that can be found under the reactions portion on the bottom right of your screen. We do respectfully ask that comments are limited to 3 minutes each. And Rob, are you going to keep time on comments? And go ahead, Rob. Floor is open if anybody would like to make a comment at this time. Just a reminder, if anybody would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand in Zoom, hit the reaction feature in the bottom right of your screen.
Do we have a way of knowing how many public members are on this right now?
We have 8 members, Rob, 8 members on right now, Andrea.
Thank you.
13, including staff and ourselves.
Excellent point. Thank you for that, Todd. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Any comments, concerns, or motion to approve the consent agenda for items A, B, C, D, E, and F minus F3 and 4?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Renee, would you call the roll?
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Hendrick,
Yes.
Director Westbrook,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next up is the general manager's report. If Dave, if you want to take it from here.
Specifically, you have your general manager's report in the packet. There was some items that I went into more detail and that you've approved in the consent agenda. I just wanted to point out specifically item 4D is a report from MPPA that we have not historically had on the consent agenda. So I just put in there, it's a report on similar to what Rob gave last month about the problems that we're experiencing on the distribution side of things. MPPA is just updating its members on the problems that it's seeing in the solar industry, particularly in the contracts that we currently have. One particular contract for implementation in 2022 is being delayed. And I think I also gave you an article just in the paper. I think there were one of the online rags that I get also suggesting the same type of thing. But the interesting thing is a lot of the polysilicon that's used in the industry panels is coming out of China, and it's actually not just the normal, pandemic problems of getting supply chain issues that you're dealing with. And that particular instance is actually a trade restriction that is being implemented from a certain area of China that uses forced labor. So we're seeing, basically people we haven't had anyone declare force majeure, not yet, but they're basically saying, we want to delay implementation on some of those contracts. So we're going to be seeing that as we go forward. Just want to specifically point to that. If you haven't seen it in your packet yet, take a look at that. The other item, just to report, we did sell our $25 million of bonds yesterday. Everything went smoothly. We've got the 25 million and paid off the $12.5 million or so of the bands, and we paid off the portion of the bands for the snowmelt with cash, and we paid for the closing costs with cash as well. So that all went smoothly. I think there was a question in the information that we provided council. Council did request a piece of information that we didn't share directly with you, but it was essentially that report that is included in the general manager report. And primarily they were interested in what they call the sources and uses document. I don't think that's what people thought it was, but essentially that just shows that the closing costs or the closing costs, for lack of a better term, were paid out of cash and did not use the bond proceeds. So that's all that document really says. But that is reported in your item 5A of your general manager report. Additionally, there were some questions about, I think at this meeting, we were planning on trying to have a report on the environmental work on Harbor Island. Because of the difficulty in getting 4 members and trying to scale this meeting back, we postponed that presentation. We do not have it completed yet, and we're going to try to put together a presentation for a special meeting, preferably a joint meeting. Hopefully in that probably second week of January is probably the first time that we're going to be able to have that meeting. And I did just receive a invitation to a meeting. I think it's the 7th, when that presentation is due from Golder in our environmental attorney. So they're in the process of putting that presentation together, and we will try to schedule that in early January. I think the problem that we're going to have is getting quorum, particularly in January with the restrictions being lifted or the allowances being lifted in OMA for remote meeting, and Larry's continued. If Larry's continued to be medically unable to attend, we're gonna have a tough time getting quorum for any meeting in January. So again, just a report there. We're trying to put together.
Dave, sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just when does that Open Meetings Act change with the Zoom meetings? Is it December 31st?
December 31st.
Okay.
And That actually goes back to the beginning of the year. That actually goes back to the beginning of the year when, they did pass these allowances. They allowed for a local entity through December 31 to allow for remote metering or remote meetings. So I think the council did last week allow for through the December 31st remote meetings. We've taken advantage of that, but that will not be allowed for us after December 31st unless for some reason the legislature extends it for some reason. But I don't think we're seeing any activity at all that would suggest they're going to do that.
So in anticipation of, let's say, a board member has a medical issue, we could potentially have them join by Zoom, correct? Even we had a.
Yes, the medical exemption from the on-site requirement, it is going to go past. That's going to survive the sunsetting of this OMA pandemic rules.
I do have some questions. You kind of threw out the 7th, some things about Golder. I'm a little bit lost on what you're talking about. I asked earlier this week, I was informed by one of the council members that they received a laid out plan of how they would like to handle, how the Board of Light and Power is proposing that we handle the conversation with the CRC and other contaminants on Harbor Island. I asked on Friday for a copy of that report. I may have misspoke and said it was created by Eric. I got a comment back from you, Dave, that it was in fact not created from Eric, but it was done by Arthur Siegel in coordination with Eric and Golder. I never got a copy of that. Is there a copy of some document that was provided to the city council
No,
from our staff or our environmental lawyer or firm?
no, there was nothing. And I think I answered the question. Again, there was going to be a preparation of a document to share with this joint meeting, but I have no understanding whatsoever. And I think Eric's on the line as well. I have no idea what document was shared with council, and it was not created by us.
Okay, did you share anything with council recently that you haven't shared with us?
No, I did not share any document, and Eric did not share any documents. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know what documents were shared with council. We did not share any documents with council recently on any presentation, any opinion that was prepared. I don't know what you're talking about.
Was there a letter dated December 9 from Eagle to you and the environmental attorney that was sent to council?
The letter that we received from Eagle on the 9th was sent to the city attorney in preparation for our discussion with the joint committee earlier, but I did not send that document. I don't know what was done with that document. We are planning on sharing that document. And if that letter was shared, excuse me, if that letter was shared with council, I don't know about.
Question. Can I ask another yes or no question, please?
Yes, please.
Is there a letter from you, a letter that you sent on November 5 and another sent by Arthur Siegel on October 27th that was sent over to the city that us, the board members, have not received? Yes or no?
I don't know what the process that we have set up is. We are sending letters back and forth to Eagle. That is happening. All right. That's been happening for 2.5 years. What we have been trying to do is get together with the council and have a presentation to get you all up to speed on all of these letters going back and forth. There are letters going back and forth. Now, what's also happening at the same time is our council is keeping the city attorney up to speed on all of these letters going back and forth. And I think the problem that's may be happening here, and I learned about this today, so I'm trying to figure it out as well. I actually had a call into Pat because I think what's happening is our attorney is updating the city attorney is updating the manager, and he may be sending out some updates or something like that to council that I am not aware of whatsoever. So at this point in time, our goal was to update the board and council on all of this activity at a meeting so that you guys can ask questions together. Everybody can get the same information. But if there's any information going to council on any activities that are happening, I do not know what those are not coming from me, and they're not being distributed to anyone until we were going to distribute that stuff at this meeting, and that got canceled. So I think part of the problem is that we have multiple parties doing multiple things, and we're trying to get everybody in the room together so that we don't have one party getting one piece of information from one person and another person getting another piece of information from somebody else. I have no clue what's being given from the city attorney to the city manager to a city council member. I have no record whatsoever of that. And I don't, and if you're getting information from a city council member, it has nothing to do with us trying to hide anything or other. We have been actually trying to get a meeting together so that we would share all this information with you.
Okay, I don't need you to elaborate anymore. So there was a letter, there's letters going back and forth between our environmental attorney to Eagle that the board is not receiving. Is that a correct statement? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Todd, do you have interest in knowing what's going back and forth between our environmental attorneys and Eagle?
Well, of course I do.
Mike, do you have interest in knowing what's going back and forth between our environmental attorneys and Eagle?
Obviously, yes. I think Dave, I mean, I'm just trying to play middleman here, but Dave, you're hoping that we could have this joint meeting with city council, cover all this stuff. I think what Andrea is asking for is if there's correspondence that she could be privy to in advance, and that doesn't seem like an unreasonable request.
We have been posting information, and I guess this is for the board. How do you want to receive this information? Do you want to receive every piece of information that when we get something from Eagle, do you want us to immediately send that out with no presentation or whatever together? Every time we they request us a piece of information, and literally this is occurring for 2 years. We have a stack of, this big of you want to see every single piece of correspondence between Eagle I think we have posted publicly every significant piece of information that we received. And I think we've done that within weeks of actually getting that piece of information for the last 2 years.
Okay, hold on.
Trying to hide anything.
Okay, Dave, can I talk?
Yes.
There was a letter that was sent by the attorney to Eagle on October 23 that I do not see posted on our website, or actually our environmental compliance report website has been updated. The pictures look great. I just noticed that a minute ago. I do not want a data dump of information with all of the important information nested in it, as has been done in the past when I have, as a citizen, asked for information. But I think any formal letter that goes out between the Board of Light and Power, or from our attorneys, or from Golder, or any formal letter that comes in from Eagle, I think that all the board members here would at least like that. And I want to just say it very clearly, because it seems that we either get nothing or we request it and we get a lot of excuses of why, you know, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. I don't want to be obfuscated with information. I just want any formal letter between Eagle and our hired attorneys and environmental consulting firm, or anything that you send out on our behalf. Besides that, anything that's requested by any board member, personally or collectively, I think it's appropriate that we get it. Is that a realistic request?
I don't think we said we aren't going to.
I'm just making sure, because you keep on saying that you'd like us to be clear on what our expectations are, and I'm trying to be clear on our expectations. And I don't want to just speak for myself. That's why I'm asking our other board members if what I'm saying is appropriate. So there's no confusion of whether this is coming from one board member or the board.
So Dave, I think there's a
I
higher
think-
level of interest with the current board than there maybe has been in the past. I mean, Andrea obviously has got
I
some
don't
stuff she
think that
wants.
that's true. All right. And I think, I mean, what I would ask is exactly what Andrea is asking. All right. I think, and I'm going to ask Eric to come on here as well, is I do think there has to be one spot that's controlling the disbursement to board members, to council members. We will all get on the same page of what information you want to see, what you don't want to see. But what's happening apparently, and this is, you know, we get a piece of information. I think Eric has prepared, you know, then he when we got this rather lengthy, and it's a 7 or 8 page document that we received from Eagle. The first thing that happens is we go to our consultants, they review it, they comment on it, they prepare a response to it, they work on it. And from my perspective, if I was a board member, I would want to see the documentation and the response that we're going to provide and input from our various consultants. That was all being prepared for this document that we received on the 9th. And we were prepared to bring it to the board in a joint meeting this week. And that meeting got canceled. We did not have enough people together. But I do think that some of these rather lengthy letters being put out into the public domain without any kind of response or explanation from our staff that is working on it is not a good idea. All right. So it's not like we're trying to hide anything. It's not like we're trying to not prevent anything. It's just that when these documents go out with no explanation at all, and apparently that's what's happened through the city hall, is they got a copy of this email. We were in the process, or this letter, we were in the process of having our Golder, our attorneys, Eric Booth, all commenting on it, making statements on it, and preparing a presentation on it. And the letter went out. Now we'll release the letter. I've got nothing wrong with it, but now you're going to get the letter without any kind of explanation, without any kind of input. And what our goal was
Thank you for
not to hide it, not to hide it, not
That's
to.
fine. I appreciate your opinion, but I think we'd just like the letters when they come in. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're being clear on that.
Okay, Eric, I would like you to make I guess a statement on what happened when we received this letter. You know, why why do we just not forward that letter from Arthur to the city manager and me just to send it out? This process has been developed for the city manager to talk, or excuse me, the city attorney to talk with our attorney about this letter. When they get out, the attorney then has an opportunity to ask questions. The city attorney asks questions of Arthur of the letter, and then that letter goes to the city manager through the city attorney so that they can all ask questions, they can all get input, and then the city manager can brief the council, and our team, Eric and myself, can brief you guys. We're planning on doing that with this particular letter. I think it's not a good idea, but if that's what you want, we're going to caution you against that. But if you just want the letter, the day it comes in, we'll send it out to you. If that's what you want us to do, we will be more, if that's what you want us to do, we'll do it.
Dave, just so you guys know, there is a letter from December 9th from Eagle to Dave and Arthur. And we just met between Arthur and Golder and myself today. So typically when we send a letter to Eagle, they respond within 30 to 45 days, depends on how easy or how hard it is. Sometimes it's months, but generally it's about 45 days. We typically follow the same path. We get a letter and we try to get a response out between 30 and 45 days. So that's the process. So recognize that if you get intermediate correspondence, there's a process we have to go through to figure out, what's the best response. And I think you'll see from the latest letter is, we've got to pick a path for compliance for the site. Something we've been advocating for a little over a year. And this last letter will highlight it. So I'm a staff member. You guys got to figure out what's best for your process. But just recognize there's a process that we go through to prepare a response, and typically we don't all convene within a couple of days. It's usually within the week or the second week after, and then we start talking through how we think is the most appropriate response and how we decide to move forward.
Eric, I would like to address specifically the claim that's being made here. Is there any effort whatsoever on behalf of our attorneys or on behalf of Golder or on behalf of you, or quite frankly, I think I received this letter about 3 or 4 days after it was received. Is there any effort whatsoever to hide this information from the public or not provide it to the public and to our regulatory body or our governing bodies in a as timely fashion as we possibly can? Is there any effort whatsoever?
Well, I think the key point is,
Go ahead.
I think the key thing
Go
is
ahead,
there is no hiding, right? These are public documents. It's just a question of at what point do you make them public? Do you make them public as you're going through the process? Do you make it public as you can start, coordinating the information together? But Grand Haven's a little different because we've been in this period of controversy where we're putting all the correspondence out there as once we figure that it's enough to frame the picture, because we have seen a lot of people jump to conclusions, but most utilities don't do any of this back and forth correspondence. If you look at the other CCR websites, it's just typically the reports, closure plans, closure status. It's not any of the process back and forth, but that's what this utility decided to do. And so that's what we're doing.
I think
When it gets posted, I guess, that's what the utility's got to figure out. The board's got to figure out is best for
Eric,
the utility and the community, but it would be tough because people are quick to form opinions of following the process and jumping to a conclusion before the process has been allowed to go through all the way. That would be my only caution.
Eric, I think you did present an analysis. And I know this was on the CCR side of things, but I think we at one point in time looked at every CCR website that's out there and did an analysis of what information we're putting out there. Now, I guess we can question how quickly we've putting it out there, but we did an analysis of all of the information on all of these CCR websites. and we compared what we have out there publicly available by not asking for it, not doing it, but just going to the website and looking at it. And what was the comparison that was made between what we have made available is particularly all these just letters going back and forth, not reports, just letters going back and forth. How are we doing this in comparison to others?
We're doing it completely different than every other one because every other utility is not putting the back and forth correspondence. They're putting the requirements that Rule 257 requires you to put on the record, the public record, which is the compliance plans, closure plans, stability plans, fugitive dust plans, annual groundwater monitoring reports. We have taken the
Great,
step to
that-
do more than that. I guess we just got to
Just
figure out
that-
where we want to go from here.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Then it sounds like we're in the right direction to set the stage for transparency. Let's keep going in that direction and at least make sure that the board members get the letters.
So for resolution,
Letters like tomorrow or
resolu-
after this meeting?
for resolution on this issue,
We'll put the letter out tomorrow with no explanation. We'll just put the letter out.
can you email it to the board?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll get the email, out, but there will be no explanation. And I think that's the part of the problem is we were preparing a more in-depth analysis associated with it. So when you get this letter, all you're going to have at this point in time is the letter. As soon as we complete the analysis and the recommendations and the question, probably the answers to the questions that you're going to have when you read this, we are not prepared to do that because what I just told you today is that our attorneys and our environmental consultants and Eric have committed, at least that I've saw, is that they will have a presentation available to you all. And I think the date that we were shooting for was January 7th. So after January 7th, we would like to get together with a public meeting. And our goal at this point in time is, I don't think we're going to even have enough people for a closed meeting. So we're going to have a open meeting with them discussing this letter, as well as, I think it's been 6 months since we've had a broad board council review of everything that's occurring. And that's what we're trying to do, is not just talk about this one letter, but talk about all of the other
This
stuff.
is a joint meeting with city council.
If we can get a joint meeting, that would be great. If we have to have 2 separate meetings, we'll do that. But I think it's important at this point in time, and we wanted to do this in December. I mean, everyone knows that we wanted to do this in December, that we wanted to try to get this meeting done so that we could update the board, because this letter is just the latest in a 3 or 4 month process. So we have tried to, we think it's important, and we've said it. And I think we're on the record is trying to schedule a meeting to go over all of this information.
So
Mike,
go ahead, Tom,
Mike, may I?
please.
Well, we're talking about this January 7th. And as my understanding, if you're having difficulty getting a quorum, we can still do it by Zoom up until the 31st. Was that looked at trying to get everybody together before January? If that would make it easier.
We have the last, again, and this is for Mike, and Mike and Larry and I made the decision as the chairs to scale back the meetings for December and focus our attention on moving these meetings into early January, because we're having difficulty getting enough people. Now, hopefully Larry will be available, in early January. Obviously you will not be available then. So the question comes about is, how many people can we get? I mean, I don't think Jerry Witherall will be available either the end of this month or into January, but I think Larry will not be available. I mean, he's basically said he is not available through the end of this month at the earliest in early January. His
Fingers crossed, January, there is a possibility that Larry could attend and we could have a quorum for this.
And then we'd have a quorum of 3 for this joint meeting, if that can be. I mean, the other alternative is if we can only get 2 members and Larry is not available, and obviously Todd will not be able to go in, then the only other alternative is just to bring the 2 board members that we have into a council meeting, and at least we can update the council and 2 board members, and then get the information out to the members that are absent, in written form. I think there has been a kind of a bit of a shift, and I know this is where the board, maybe this board more than the last board, depends on written information. I don't think, particularly in these things, that you're going to get the type of briefing that you're going to get when you have these individuals sitting in front of you explaining what's going on in these letters than just getting the letter. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody's not bright enough to read the letter and understand it, but from my perspective, I need it. I mean, this is some complex stuff that's going on. And if I just get a letter without an explanation of it, we can get that letter out to you. But my concern is we get the letter out and then there's 1,000 questions that the letter raises, and then we don't meet again for like 3 weeks. So there is a concern in my mind, particularly if we release these are not confidential letters. So, we could get a request tomorrow from anyone on the meeting that hears this, and they can FOIA the letter and we'll provide it to them. Just like we said, we'd provide it to you. I think the problem is trying to get all of these people together and having a real discussion about this information so it's meaningful, because I could just shoot the data out, and I don't think that's
Dave,
worthwhile.
So I think that Andrea's asked for this letter. I think it's a reasonable request. I think we all understand that, myself, I mean, I do environmental for a living. I always do better when I have somebody smarter than me, like an attorney, give me their opinions and guide me through the document. You've agreed to supplying that December 9th letter to the board members only. I mean, this is not something that goes out.
November 5, October 27.
What's that, Andrea?
And the November 5 and the October 27 letters of correspondence.
And I don't know that you know what those are, Dave, but if you could meet.
I think the one is the original letter that we sent out with our changes. And then the one is the December letter is a response to that one.
Why don't you write down those dates and then you can determine which letters those are.
Eric, are you familiar with all of those letters?
I got it covered.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Dave, one thing, if you guys don't mind, just over the next couple months chewing on, is as you're getting these, figure out what strategy you think is appropriate to disseminate this to the website. Because there will be a period, right? We know we have PFAS issues. We know at some point the city and the board are likely going to have to enter into some kind of consent order with the state, right? We have PFAS contamination emanating from the site, from the former city dump. So we're going to go down that road. And so whatever process you think is going to help us appear transparent to the public, think of the strategy you want to deploy so that if we're going to make documents available to the public, when would that be appropriate and what documents? Would it be after, let's say, it doesn't really matter to me if we do quarterly summaries with Golder and Arthur, semi-annually, whatever we feel is appropriate. Think of that strategy so that if questions come up, we can at least have vetted it out to say, here is the process we've decided to use, and we think it's the appropriate process to keep the public informed and maintain the confidentiality that's needed as we go through the legal process. My only request or hope that you'd consider.
Thank you, Eric. And Todd, I guess I'm just interested in any feedback. I mean, I know you didn't have much to say on the topic, but I mean, just wondering your feedback on the letters.
No, I can understand, where staff is hesitant. But at the same token, if it's being released to council members, I feel that there should, the same information should be released to board members.
I agree 100%. And that's what I'm saying. I guess I don't know. And I think this is the problem is I don't know what's being released to council members and what's not being released to council members. All right. I think I would like to say one thing is I do think, and this was stated, and for the new board members, they don't know this. All right. But we did have a joint board council meeting at the last meeting, the 6 months ago now, right, Eric? And one of the things that was stated there,
Correct.
and I think it's important, and I'll restate it at the next meeting. First of all, Eric, Golder, no one that is trying to address this situation created the problem. This problem was created 30 years ago. You're somewhat, we have not contaminated. I mean, at this point in time, every ounce of contamination on the island was placed there before 1983. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to represent you in as honest and transparent way as possible. We have no motivations to do anything other than that. And I think what has been happening, and it really has to, if there's any evidence whatsoever of Eric or Arthur or Golder or anyone else not representing the city in the best interest of the city, trying to work, there is absolutely no motivation, at least that I know of. And if anybody has any evidence whatsoever that any of these parties are trying to hide evidence, which is which accusations are out there, whether we're making them ourselves or whether others are making them, we are.
I think the only accusation today was these letters weren't shared with us and the board members, and they were shared with city council. So I think that was the only real accusation made today, and I think we resolved that. So,
and I think that our rationale is we had no intentions of hiding them. We had intentions of providing additional information with the letter. Other people in the city chose to send out the letter without the amplifying information on it. That was their decision. If the board, as Eric said, if the board wants the letters without any amplifying information, we are more than happy to address them. And the thing about the earlier letters from Eagle, we took the letters from Eagle and we put together a response. That response is what we provided to you. When we provide the letter from Eagle and our response, we're providing both of them together. If you want the letter without that, that's fine. We will do what you want us to do, but please cut the accusations of people that we're not doing things and we're trying to hide something. There is nothing further from the truth.
Andrea, go ahead.
I think that the approach you're taking is exactly what I'm trying to communicate. So just hear me out for a second. You just said, this problem was not your fault. This happened before you were here. This is not your responsibility, your staff. We all agree and understand that. This is our problem. This is our city. We live here. We represent this city. So when we hire someone and you throw on the consent agenda $5, $10, $20, $35,000 to Golder and Eagle, and you don't expect us to ask any questions, and we don't even have an invoice to know what it's for, and then you don't give us the letter, and you draft a letter, and you come up with a plan of how we're going to handle it, and you want to give us a report later after you've made all those decisions, that's what I'm concerned about. What that posture is that we know this, we know best, we're going to handle it, we're just going to ask for approval of the board to pay for what we think is best and what we're doing. And what I'm saying is We carry the heavy responsibility of cleaning up the contamination in this city. We chose to run, we chose to represent our city, and we do not take it lightly. We pay consultants to advise us on the decisions that we make. And we take the responsibility for that. So when you go and you write letters back and forth to Eagle on our behalf, and I don't know the tone, I don't know the path forward, and you think that we should just sit here and wait for a long, lengthy discussion, I'm not okay with that. And that tone needs to change today.
Okay, so
Is that understandable?
okay, now I understand 100% what you said, Andrea, but you're simply wrong. All right, you're simply wrong. You are not responsible. You are responsible as a board member here. But the very first day that I was hired here, and I came into the very first meeting, the very first thing that they appointed me, and the very first thing that they appointed Eric when he came here, was they told me as part of my contract that I am the responsible party, me.
Okay. Then
And-
maybe,
and
you know,
Eric-
I
and
don't
Eric is-
understand and
Eric is
I'm
the
wrong,
responsible-
but
And
copy
Eric
of
is
that
the,
contract.
excuse me, can I finish? And Eric is the responsible party for all EPA Eagle transactions. Now, that means that I can be personally held, not you, I can be personally held liable legally for if we mess this up. So yes, me and Eric have a higher standard than you do as a board member. And we are trying as best we can to represent us and do what we have been appointed to do on behalf of the city. Eric has
guess
put
don't
in thousands and thousands of hours working on this, and the continuous accusation that we are somehow not doing what we were appointed to do in the fashion that the city would have us do. We have no problem with you telling us to change what we're doing. What I have a problem with is the accusation that we are not acting ethically. That's the problem that I have. And I can be held criminally accountable for that. So if you have any evidence whatsoever of me acting unethically or Eric acting unethically, then bring it forward. But if not, then let's work together in a positive fashion to get the problem fixed.
Okay, you're right. I think I probably need to see your contract so I can understand at some point, my role and your role in it. So we could probably add that to the list of things that would help me to be a better board member that should be provided.
So I'm gonna bookend this whole conversation.
Yes,
We're
that'd
gonna
be
wrap it all up. Dave, you're gonna supply the report.
Yep.
The joint council meeting is gonna be, you're gonna look into scheduling that for January. And getting creative as we can to make it happen.
Yep.
You'll let us know if it's only 2 board members that can come. I mean, I think that meeting, just for, to get that information out to everybody, get those two parties together and get some type of strategy and understanding. I think that needs to be the focus for the next step with the process. So you're going to coordinate that meeting with the city. I mean, is that
Yeah,
okay?
I will work with Pat to try to schedule the meeting jointly. My understanding is that you would like to meet jointly in this regard, would be
Yeah.
the first and foremost way. But from my perspective, if we can't meet jointly, then I would like to go ahead with separate meetings sooner rather than later, as soon as we can get these things booked.
And
Because
that's-
I think this leaving this message out there that we're trying to stall or not wanting to meet, quite frankly, there's no one that would rather brief the board and council than Eric and his team, because quite frankly, they're getting, there's and I put it in my general manager's report. There's a lot of rumors floating around out there and accusations being made that either Arthur or Golder or Eric or I we're wasting money. We're not spending money wisely.
So
We're-
this meeting's important. I
This
mean,
is
it's-
really important.
everybody agrees it's an
No one
important
wants it to be put together more
So,
than us.
I mean, let's figure out what's going on with Larry's health situation. God willing, he's able to have a meeting in either, and he can attend by Zoom, right? You know, I mean,
Larry,
because of his, if he still has medical issues that preclude him
Yes.
from coming,
yes.
I mean, I think we need to keep that in mind to keep it.
And
quorum.
if we have to go there and help set him up and get him on Zoom, we will do that
Okay.
if that's what he wants to do.
Andrea and Todd, any other issues on the consent agenda? I know that we had,
There was two items that Andrea wanted to bring up specifically. I guess I don't know exactly what the questions are.
one
The
was
question-
the permit.
The one was the Npds permit fee. I think there was a question of whether this was at the diesel plant or whether it was at the sim site. I thought I answered it. But if there's other questions on
Yep.
the actual
That's an
fee
idea.
or what this is the fee associated with the permitting for the Npds permits that are existing on the sim site and on the diesel plant, but the diesel plant is only 3,700 or something like that, 3,500, 3,650 on the diesel plant and 8,700. And these were the exact same fees that we paid last year. If you look at and I know you guys two of you weren't here, but if you look at January 2021, this exact same item, Npds permit fee, was on the January 2021 board meeting for $8,700. And there was no questions asked and it was approved. It's a routine, this
May I
entire,
ask my question? You can
Yes.
answer the question that I asked.
yes,
So I asked Eric directly, and I asked Eagle if there was any discharge permits associated with the Harbor Island site. I don't remember exactly when that date was, but I was told that there are no discharge permits on Harbor Island and that it did not require any discharge permit.
who told you
So
that? Who told you
Are
that?
you sure you're not confusing an air permit with that, Andrea? Because we do no longer have an
Yeah.
air permit.
I'm
But we've
positive.
always had a water discharge permit since the 1980s. And there is still an active permit. But the air permit is
Okay.
gone. The air permit has been voided,
Eric, could you explain?
which
what-
isn't,
Could you,
go
could
ahead,
you,
Mike.
this NPDES permit, so this has been
Oh, It's
active.
all right.
Can you hear
So
me?
you-
okay? Can you explain what this permit exactly does, just for the record? I mean, what's active, how long it's been in place?
Sure. So there's two types of discharges. There's air emissions and there's water discharges. And then you could say there's solid waste material, but that goes to a licensed landfill. We don't own our own landfill, but if we did, there'd be a permit for that as well. So our air permit is voided. There is no air permit for the Harbor Island site. For SIMS, there is for the PTI for the new CHP, but those plans have been abandoned. So the SIMS air permit is voided, it's gone, it's done. There is a discharge permit that has been in place since 1982, I believe, that handles all the water outfalls. And there used to be a lot more than there was when the plant retired. It was about 8, it got necked down to 3. And in 2012, one of the outfalls was merged into it. So we had 2 active outfalls. We had outfall 003, which was a direct discharge to the east wetland. It was a pipe that went in the ground and then an overflow culvert. And that allowed you to discharge 52,000 gallons per day of boiler blowdown, contact cooling water, floor drain water from the oil water separator, transformer pad, treated sanitary waste. So you used to send that to outfall 003, the east wetland, up until the plant retirement. And a little bit after as we were doing drain downs. Outfall 005 is the south channel discharge. So that's right by where the pavilion is at Linear Park. There's a pipe that comes out. That allowed you to discharge 67 million gallons per day. Most of that material was non-contact cooling water discharge, but the outfall you eliminated in 2012 allowed you to discharge 400,000 gallons per day into the north wetland. That got moved into the south outfall. So out of that 67 million gallons, 400,000 gallons was effluent that you used to send to that. And that was your discharge from your ash ponds, the Unit 3 ash ponds. So it would include demineralizer water, service water, bottom ash transport water, scrubber sump water, coal pile runoff. All of that was going into the Unit 3A and 3B impoundments and discharging through that south channel. That permit is still, I have to be careful here because there's a permit that's active, but the permit expired in 2015. The plant staff applied for a new permit in April 2015, which was before the date that they were required to do it. So you operate under what they call a permit shield. So no new permit has been provided by the state, and it's not uncommon. They're typically behind on their permits. So you're operating under that permit shield. Every year you pay that $8,700, just like when you had your permit for the air emissions, you used to pay somewhere around $35,000 per year. And it was based on the level of emissions that you put out in the air. Same thing with the diesel plant.
I think that, Eric, can I just interrupt for just a minute? I think that's the important thing here is what this fee is this is a fee. I mean, Eagle raises a lot of their revenues or costs through fees back to the people that they're regulating. So what they do, if you have an active permit as of October 1, this isn't, we didn't submit a permit application to them and get charged. If you have an active permit, an NPDS active permit on your site, they will send you a bill calculated on October 1st if your permit is still active. We had an active permit on October 1st. They sent us a bill. The invoice date was December 1, one for the diesel plant, one for the sim site, because both sites have an active discharge permit in the system. And if we had an active discharge permit in the system on October 1st, we need to pay this bill. And it's a calculated amount. It's the same as it was last year. It just goes to support their efforts. If they can still change the permit or put conditions on it, or if we find PFAS and they need to modify it in some fashion, they will do that through an independent process that has nothing to do with this invoice. The invoice just says, you have an active permit. We need money to run the system. Here's your assessed value for the year. We pay it. And that's the invoice that you see. It's a consent agenda item because it's routine. We get it every year. It's been the same amount for several years. We get it, we pay it, and then we tell the board. And that's what we're doing here is we're just telling the board. We're not asking you because we don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah,
We're
no,
just,
so I think
we're just telling the board how much it costs.
Andrew's concern was that she was told that there was no active permit on the island, and there obviously is an active permit. I guess, Andrew, do we need to do any more clarification or?
Yeah, I guess my direct question a long time ago was, are we violating our Npds permit? And I was told, well, actually, there's not a Npds permit. Actually, it's still regulated through da 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 da. So, okay, what I want to know is how often are we violating the grounds and the requirements of this permit or any other permit?
So
Is it
when
monthly?
the plant, well, right now there's no discharge. You've got nothing that's pumping water, moving water, discharging water through these outfalls.
Okay.
Groundwater is seeping out, but these are point sources for an NPDS.
Okay, so when the ground source seeps out, is that considered discharge?
That's an area source, and this permit does not apply to those.
Okay, so why do we have a discharge permit if we're not discharging?
That's a good question. So you could void this out if you don't think you'll use that outfall 005 in the future. Now, we have the coal pile runoff pond, for lack of a better term, the stormwater runoff collection point that you've always had. And then you've got the water that's collected in the Unit 3 impoundment. Either way you swing it with the discovery of PFAS, we're going to have to install some type of treatment system. So the question becomes, do you maintain this NPDS permit and keep outfall 005 post-treatment and discharge it through that? Do you just do it through an administrative consent order? What is the most appropriate mechanism? We talked with Eagle on Monday, WRD staff, which is Water Resource Division. We asked that question and they're looking into it. They don't know what the best mechanism is. Ideally, what we would like to do, and this is what we told them, is there's other sites that are dewatering and sending their treated water to the water treatment plant. They need a full characterization of the water, but that's not a big deal. I'm sorry.
Do we do that right now?
We've
we
never
bringing
discharged
people-
water to the wastewater treatment plant, but we are looking at that as maybe the best option. Rather than treat it and discharge it through one of these outfalls, is our better option to treat it and send it to the wastewater treatment plant. We can probably get,
Water through the water
We
treatment
don't, Eric,
plant?
Eric, we don't have a wastewater I mean, that, everyone
No.
realizes that we don't have, I mean, we would have to truck it to some
no,
point.
we pipe it.
If we don't have a wastewater connection on the sim site.
No, it would take some piping.
Right.
We are looking into it right now as an option.
We'd have to create one.
It may be a quicker option than working through a permit amendment or an administrative consent order,
Right. I get it.
but we're not there yet.
I want to be clear that we don't have a wastewater connection that we can utilize either. So that it's not quite as simple as just using one or the other. We only have one discharge right now, and that's this NPDS discharge point. We can either use that or create something else in the future that will cost us some money. And I think, you forwarded me the voicemail from
Chris Feldkamp.
the Eagle this week that basically said they would recommend that we keep this NPDS discharge permit active, at least until we decide what the appropriate mechanism is to use. And this may be an avenue that we utilize. It may not be. But if we close it down, obviously, then we would have to reapply for an NPDS permit, and we may or may not be granted that. So keeping this particular NPDS permit active based on what they told us.
I'm with you. I understand. I'm just trying to get clarity and make sure that, I understand that I'm getting one answer. Because I mean, I'm kind of surprised to even hear you say that we don't truck water over to the water treatment plant.
We
don't
have
ever truck water?
we have with the condensate from the snow melt building. We used to,
We trucked it over to a different point
but that's a small amount. It's like 500 gallons. We're talking a much greater volume. To truck this water out would be pretty tough.
right.
I mean, I sympathize with you a little bit, Andrea, because we do cover a lot of material, right? And it is hard to keep it all straight. And because and this isn't the first time, right? We've had board members say, well, you told us one thing. No, that's not what we told you. This is what we told you, and you might have thought you heard this. We've had that happen in the past, and I get it. With discharges and permits, we've got a lot of permits. We've had a lot of different types of discharges, whether it's air, water, solid waste. It's easy to get it mixed up, but we've always had this permit, and we've never voided this one out, but we did void the air permit out.
I think we're all set on that item. Thank you all. Andrea, unless you've got anything else, be good?
No, we're recording this meeting. We keep the records of this meeting afterwards, right? Besides just our very basic meeting minutes. So if we need to come back to this and have this conversation, we have it. Is that correct?
It's being recorded, Andrea.
And do we keep them afterwards?
Rob's reporting no library, but the short period of time.
Okay, I think that would probably be another good move, right? Since we have it and we have the capacity to do it, that we can keep our records of our meetings so that there's no confusion for the future on who said what.
We've got that on another item agenda later on down the agenda. Maybe we can cover that then, if that's okay. I think, and under other business, I had, maybe just an update on our best
When
practices.
I was walking by, did you go, I can hear you?
Oh, is that an echo? The other item that was under general manager's report was a progressive A&E purchase order for $20,000 and $20,087 for the Path to Facilities Review and Report. You requested that be moved down. Andrew, you want to just go ahead with any questions you had on that document?
Yeah, I think I might have the answer to my own question, but I don't know. So I actually did receive, I asked for and received the purchase order from the Progressive A&E staff, Path to GHBLP project. There was two different purchase order numbers. It was 22010 and then 22010-1 that totaled out to almost the value of what you're now asking for on 22010-2.
No,
And
that's-
it also does, we're going to have to issue a new purchase. There was somewhere that I read that we're going to have to issue a new purchase order. So I'm just trying to clarify. We spent about $21,000 on the packet that we received last month regarding different locations for an office building or some kind of BLP building. Is this another $20,000?
So in action 2109E that occurred on August 19th, when we
Hold on a
came,
minute. Sorry. In action what? And where do I see this?
in the minutes of the August 19 meeting, when we
August
canceled.
9th.
Okay, so
Okay, I don't,
what is a purchase order? Why is it confirming? What we normally do with a purchase order is not an invoice. It's an authorization to do work. All right. So typically you would have an authorization for over $5,000. If it's not a routine item, we would negotiate a price to do something. We would put a purchase order in the system. We would bring that to you for your approval, and it would appear under the normal general manager report, not as a confirming purchase rec, but as a purchase order. We would enter that in the system. And then when the work was completed, we would submit a request for payment. And at the time of payment, you would not see anything. We would just pay it because the purchase order was already approved. Now, what is a confirming purchase order? A confirming purchase order means that we didn't use the normal process to approve a particular transaction. We either, the board authorized it directly, and when we got the invoice, we put the value down so that you know what the actual cost was associated with the authorization that you made. So when we hired Progressive AE to do the Path to study, how was that purchase order approved? You need to look back at 2109E, the August 19th meeting, and Director Witherall, supported by Director Keith, moved to approve proceeding with a redefinition of the bond project, removal of the CHP generation component, and seeking an evaluation of alternative locations for all other necessary utility facilities. So then there was discussion at the meeting, and the board chose to continue to use Progressive A&E because they had already done work for us and designed it. And we didn't know at the time how much this study would cost, but they had suggested to us at the time that it would be between $41,000 and $45,000 for them to spend 3 months reevaluating all this stuff, doing what they did, and giving the report to you that they gave you last meeting. So last month, we got 2 invoices from Progressive A&E on this authorization for work that the board gave. We did not have a purchase order in the system because the board approved it directly. And we put in a confirming purchase order so we could pay the invoices that came in. And then we reported to the board what it was. And that was the first two that you said, 22010 was the base purchase order. And then if you see a -1 or a -2 or a -3, that's the same purchase order in the system, same vendor, just a follow-on payment. So we had anticipated that this work would cost between 40 and 45,000. That's what they told us. That's what we told the board in August, that's what it was going to cost. They authorized us to do the work without a purchase order, and then to tell them as we go down how much it's being spent. So last month we reported those two invoices. This month there was another 20,000. If you add those three purchase orders together, the 6111, the 15293, and the 2087 that is on your confirming purchase rec today, we are reporting to the board that the work that they authorized in August cost $41,491,000, which is actually, we authorized some additional work because they actually went out and they did an assessment of the building that they provided to you, a building assessment that was not really included in the work, but they didn't do as much work as they thought they were going to do in the process. So we were able to get that work done for the 41,491. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to get a follow-on for the report or whatever. I think this 20,
No, that's a final.
that's the final. So
Mhm.
we can report to you that the 41,491 is exactly right in the middle, or actually towards the lower end of the work that they told us in August that this would cost, and they actually got more work done than what they said they were going to do. So in reporting the number here, you're not authorizing an additional purchase. You're not authorizing a payment that hasn't been authorized before. All we're doing is telling you that the work that you approved is coming in and costing essentially what you have. Now, that's the same thing that we're doing with our legal fees. You're not authorizing additional work. You have authorized Jaffe, Arthur Siegel, to do legal work for you. He's going out. Golder's doing the same thing. Trace Analytical is doing the same thing. We have a blanket PO that authorizes them to do whatever's necessary to comply with meet the compliance requirements of Eagle. And what we're doing is telling you every month in full disclosure exactly what what money we're paying on those blanket POs. And we're using pre-authorized vendors, we're using pre-authorized work, and we're just telling you what that amount is costing you. Now, if you want to move all that work into a pre-authorized PO, in other words, you want us to come every month and ask you to do that work, we will never get the work done in the time frame that it's being required to get done, because we are trying to keep up with the requests in the submittals and all that stuff that we need to do to keep this work moving. And that's why I know it's kind of it's really unique in my experience to have these purchase orders basically being confirmed after the work is essentially being done, and we're essentially required to pay them. The only reason we're essentially doing this is this money is all set aside already. It's all been the vendors have all been approved by the board. And I think if you want to question these things, really what we need to do is do what you did here, pull them off the consent agenda, put them on the regular agenda. If you want to talk about them, about the work that we're doing and how much work they're doing, or whether or not they're doing their job or not, we should put an agenda item down. And if you want to talk about legal expenses or whatever else, how much they're doing, the appropriate mechanism is not really to question the bill that you received. It's to say, going forward, are we going to change this? Are we going to do something different? Do you want to change the consultants? Do you want to change these people? But questioning essentially an invoice for a pre-approved amount of work that the board approved. I mean, I don't really know how to, you know, if you want to question what they did, the board told them what to do. They went and did it. They submitted the invoice, and we told you that the cost for that particular work was within the estimate that we thought. We did it time and materials. So I suppose if it came in at $65,000 or something, time and materials, you know, then I guess the board would say, and Todd's the only one that's on the call that was there in August. But I think, you know, I look back at the minutes, Todd said he was comfortable using Progressive A&E. Every board member was comfortable using Progressive A&E to do this work because they had previously known, you know, what we're doing, and they were comfortable with them moving forward. And they billed us essentially exactly what they told us they were going to build us.
Okay, I don't remember that number coming up at the August board meeting. Todd, do you remember the number $40,000 for this report?
I'm sorry, not specifically. You know, there are a lot of POs that go through, Andrea. To know the specific amount on every one of these, no, I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember that number coming up. Is there more to the report than what we received?
Well, this is a really good question, all right? Is the majority of the work is not in creating the quote report. The majority of the work was in doing the investigation, looking at the various sites, going out, taking measurements, doing the building assessment. I've already gotten requests from the council, and Mike and I were talking about this yesterday. They want to see the quote written report. Now, if you look at the written report and you say, well, geez, that's not worth, you know, $40,000 or $45,000 or whatever, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but the report was intended to be a summary to the board of the work that they performed, the analysis that they did. And if you want to question whether or not the written report was worth 41,000, I think they would be the first ones to say that the report was just intended to be a summary of the presentation that you spent, you know, I don't know, 90 minutes or so at the last board meeting, asking them questions about what they did, how they did it, you know, why their recommendation is what the recommendation is. And I think by forwarding, again, a written report that's 3 or 4 pages long, it's got a bunch of pictures and all that kind of stuff, I don't think council is going to get the 90 minutes of discussion that you had with the consultant about what they did by reading the written report. I think.
Okay, I just think a realtor could have done for a more
I guess
reasonable.
the question for Eric is in it. This is a good one. I'm not questioning that it's. Did we get, you know, $41,000 of work? I'm quite sure that if we asked Progressive A&E, they could provide us the amount of time that they worked, who did what they did, all that sort of stuff. And Eric is the appropriate individual because he was our staff member that was, you know, working with them. Did they perform $41,000 of work or not? I don't think Eric signed off.
Dave, I mean, I can answer that if you'd look. I mean, you have to look at what they did for you. And it is tough to sift through all that especially the condensed version of the report. And we explained why we kept the confidential portion, because people are trying to sell those properties and we don't want to state why it didn't work out for us and hurt their diminish their chances of selling their property. But here's what they did. They evaluated the board's best option to lead them down the path of reevaluating your building needs and alternating your work plan by shifting from building a more specialized building for your operations and field staff, which was the original intent, to moving to a more economical approach, given that the utility changed direction, right? They're not tying it to any generating assets. And the cheapest option was adding the admin building. We talked about that. Then they sought out the various properties for a new build, lease, renovating existing available properties. They had multiple site visits. Then when they discovered a viable option that they felt they were going to recommend. Then they developed a test fit plan based on this existing property. So they came in, took all the measurements they needed, went out, got the original design drawings, and tried to fit our workspace needs into that to see if it was something they could recommend or not. Then when they found out, yep, it fits in there well, then they came back and did a detailed condition assessment of that option. So yeah, there's a lot of, like any study we do, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that maybe doesn't make it into the report. And I don't know if it is, I think you got your money's worth for what they did. They're a good firm. I mean, keep in mind, these guys, Grand Haven uses them in a lot of other projects locally, Peerless Flats, Coast Guard Station, Tanglefoot Park. You know, they've got a good reputation in West Michigan, and that's probably why they're so successful around here. It's why we were attracted to them. So they haven't in any way charged us for something that we didn't get a good value for. But I don't know. Was that the question you asked, Dave? And does that?
Well, I think that's the question that's being asked is whether 41, we authorized, we authorized what they did, and we got what they told us they were going to provide us for essentially the fees that they thought they were going to provide. So I think the answer.
If that was being asked, my response would be, I think you got what you paid for. And I don't think we overpaid for it.
They have wrapped up all their commitments that we have authorized to Progressive A&E. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we may get one more bill for some other small additions.
Apparently.
Besides that.
No, I talked to John Everly after they submitted this last invoice, and that closes out the project.
So do we need to officially vote on these two things that we pulled off of the consent agenda?
Yes, you do. Because you pulled them off the consent agenda, so you didn't approve them as part of the consent agenda. So yes, we need to confirm these purchase recs that you are authorizing them after the fact, and that you concur with staff's authorization to pay these purchase orders.
Andrew, you want to make that motion?
Can I make a motion to approve what would now be items 5, C, and D, State of Michigan, Npds Permit Fee, and Progressive A&E and A&E Path Forward Facilities Review and Report?
I will second that motion.
Did you call the roll, Renee?
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Hendrick,
Yes.
Director Westbrook,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, I do have 3 items in other agenda that other business items that we talked about that
Okay.
we added, just a report for the most part. I think there's some of you that were involved. I know if is Ryan still on? There was a question about our customer satisfaction survey, and it didn't go quite as planned. And so I'm just reporting what happened. There was some confusion in it. We have always done a customer satisfaction survey every year, and we alternate between a smaller customer satisfaction survey and a larger one. And what do I mean by that? The larger one typically has more questions and a larger sample. All right. Smaller one, cheaper, of course, but it's in the opposite year that we're not doing a large one. We do a smaller one, smaller sample size, smaller questions, and we're billed accordingly. All right. So this year we were planning on doing the smaller customer satisfaction survey, and we have always done it with a random phone sample. All right. And the reason for that is we have a phone number for every customer. We don't have an email for every customer. So we have always randomized using the phone data that we have so that we could randomly pick either a small group sample size or a large sample size from the entire population. This year, we have about 5,200 of our 14,500 people that are now have provided us emails. So not quite 50% yet, but we were suggesting that it's easier to, obviously, and cheaper to use the emails if they're appropriately randomized into, in other words, you get somewhat of the same proportion of the customers' responses from email that you do in proportion to their total supply. So anyway, we were, and this is, if there's direct questions on how this, I'm trying to tell what the story is, but when we talk to them, our understanding of what they were going to do is pick some of the phone numbers and some of the emails, and they were going to contact those people in a random selection and then get an appropriate number of email surveys, an appropriate number or online surveys with an appropriate number of phone surveys. The problem that they did is they sent a request to all 5,200 email accounts. And we started to get, I think in 2 days, we got 92 responses or close to 100 responses via email. And they were not randomized. They were not selected in any fashion. We had no way of knowing, how they, responded or whatever. We didn't, what we did is we just said, you know what, at this point in time, there's no recovering this. All right. We just shut down the email surveys, and we said we would go 100% with the randomization of phone calls like we have in the past. And we'll try this again next year, because I wasn't sure how, and I don't think Great Blue knew how to, short of just picking randomly of the 92. And then you'd have people that actually submitted a survey that wasn't getting utilized. I'm not sure that was a good solution either. So what we chose to do, right, wrong, or otherwise, is just said, look, we sent an email out to everyone. We said, the email surveys are shut down and we're not accepting any other ones, and we're not using the email surveys, and we're going 100% to the phone surveys, randomized phone surveys that we've done in the past. And I think that was the right decision at the time. If there's someone to fault me, but we got in a situation, I don't think, and then there was a bunch of people online that were going, geez, I want to submit my survey. And we had already had too many of them. And then we were going to have to tell some of those people that we weren't going to use the surveys that they submitted. And I think the right way through this. So that's what we did. I apologize. I know Ryan Cummins was one of the council members contacted me and said, why can't I give a survey? And that's what started the whole thing. There was others that were wanted to provide a survey as well. And I think what we did is we just said, look, there's no recovering. And what we really need is about 200 responses. So having 100 responses in one fashion overweighted the survey to those online responses. And I didn't know a good way. And if somebody can tell me what a good way to randomize that and use all the surveys would not work well. So that's what happened. I apologize for the confusion. Next year, we're going to try to do this a different way, because we do value the online responses, and we would like to have, basically the best way to do this is if we can get all of our customers online, have all of them have an email that we can respond to and we can randomize it, that would by far be the best, but we simply don't have that data at this point in time. So we'll have to phase it in. Next year, we'll try to work a little bit differently, but this year we are going to the traditional phone survey. So apologize and I think, starting on the 20th is.
You're going to start all over again and do just randomized phone surveys.
So we've notified customers via,
Dave, how about damage control? I mean, I know that's like, if it's my fault, blame me, but I mean, for the people who did log in and, had a kind of a caustic response or an angry response, that it was shut down and maybe had something to say. I mean, is there, I mean, I thought we sent out a message.
They should have received an email from Great Blue apologizing for what occurred and explaining how we were proceeding going forward.
I think I did get one of those.
When,
Go ahead.
when we tried to log on, we received an email. It just said that they're no longer taking it, they're not going that route. Mike, might I add, since we're talking about these surveys, can I add something for possibly next year?
Sure.
Random's random. Do they give breakdowns on like how much more it would be to solicit information from every one of our customers? I mean, is that like out of the ballpark, too expensive? I've always thought random is just that, and like personally, a phone, my phone doesn't ring if my number's not, the number's not plugged in. So, I just always thought that if everybody has an opportunity, to fill out the survey, or that's the best route to go. My own personal.
Yeah, I think the problem, Todd, and we can have Great Blue come in here. They do this for a living, and there is a science. And obviously in this particular instance, they didn't do things quite the way I would have done it. So but this is the same thing with any polling that you have. They don't typically sample everyone because it is very expensive. So the questions that you get are the responses that you get in a smaller sample size reflective of the larger sample size? So that's why these people do what they do, and they do it very well. They've got a lot of, they have a lot of metrics that they utilize. They do ask some questions of the certain people. And the same thing happens when they try to get an age distribution simple, and so there are 4 or 5 questions that they ask at the start. And if you're so if they've already have, 50 or 60 people that exceed a certain demographic group that they're monitoring, they'll say, okay, they'll start with those questions, and then they'll say, geez, we've already got enough of your particular group. Sorry, we'll go on to somebody else. So they do randomize, they ask some questions up front to make sure that the group that they're interviewing is reflective, and the results that they get are reflective of the overall pattern. What we do know, though, Todd, to answer your original question, is if we only use the surveys from people that respond to our requests, that is not a random survey, because obviously that may or may not be reflective of the overall feelings, because some people might say, they might respond and say, well, geez, I have a real axe to grind, so I want to respond. Or I really, really am super thrilled with this utility, so I want to respond. But let's face it, there's a lot of people in the middle that might take a phone survey or may take a solicitation for an email survey, but those people probably reflect the majority of the responses. Now, that's why we hire professionals to do this, and we don't just do it like sending out and saying, we'll just do whoever we can get, take, and if we can get 1,000, returns, that survey that we do with 1,500 or 2,000 responses not selected randomly is my mind, and I think they would say the same thing, is not as good as a survey that's scientifically and demographically randomized. So, we can do, just a polling and ask for stuff, but I think that the key, and this is where I think we've had this several times in the last year where, we ask the public and we say, well, geez, we get 2,000 responses. Well, that's a large percentage of our customers. Yeah, it is. It's probably, we probably have 25,000 people that we serve. So if we get 2,000 of them, isn't that better than 200? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on if that 2,000 is reflective. And and I think that's when we're trying to gauge the true feelings of our customers, which I think is what we're trying to do. We want to make that as accurate as we possibly can. And I think that's why we've hired people that do this.
And that's been their recommendation, is to do this random sampling.
Right.
not Massive,
So, I mean,
all customer sampling for better results and reliability and sample size. Is that right?
How much does it cost for the small? So we do, what are we talking about price point here?
Well, that's a little more difficult this year because we have 2 shorter surveys included. And I think our total was, I don't remember off the top of my head, Andrea, I'm thinking around 18,000.
that's for the full 3.
For all 3.
Yeah. So what our board requested again, and I know is several small ones this year. So like I said, what we would normally have is let's say a $15,000 to $20,000 charge one year and a $5,000 to $10,000 charge the next year. This particular one year, we're having multiple surveys, and the customer satisfaction survey is one survey. But I think because of our desire expressed in our strategic plan for increased customer engagement, we put a couple follow-on surveys that we haven't even really, at this point in time, initiated. We've initiated this annual survey, but what Renee is saying is there actually is in the budget this year a couple other follow-on surveys of particular topics that we may want to.
Like pulse surveys on certain topics or something.
Yeah, like 10, not the traditional, 25 questions that we ask every year, but it would be a complete, and I think Andrea asked for the questions, I think, and I think we provided them, right?
I have them right in front.
This particular survey was kind of more in line with what we've done for the last 5 years, but we do have in the budget, now whether we use it or not is, I guess, up to the board, to ask some follow-up type surveys on more targeted type information. And I think that was a desire of the board to kind of get into maybe some of the issues that we're dealing with directly. How do you feel we're doing on Harbor Island or something, questions. And if the board wants to begin talking now about what those follow-on surveys would be, we're more than happy to, because I don't think at this point in time, we've put those questions together, but this one was kind of similar to what we've done in the past so that we compare year to year to year. So again,
My thought process is to get this survey issued, look at the results, and then make a decision on, what that second pulse survey. I mean, that's historically what we.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do it again. Is that what's happening? Mike, sorry, are you talking? Because I don't know. I
We
can't
have-
hear you.
we have multiple surveys. That's what Renee was saying. We have multiple surveys in the budget this year that we had historically have only done one annual survey. So the number that she gave you was for the multiple surveys. And I think
Collect would cost 18,000.
let us get, rather than to shoot from the hip on this one, I would prefer that, we'll get you the information. We'll answer your questions. I'd rather get the right information so that we don't have a guess. So I think that's getting us in trouble here. So let's get the real numbers out. We have a budget for this, and we have a quote from Great Blue to do the work that we asked them to do, that the board asked us to do.
And who writes the questions for this?
Again, the annual survey that we do every year, for the most part, there's probably, I think there's about 20 questions. Is that right? About 18 of those questions are very standardized customer service type questions that Great Blue asks all of the utilities that they survey. So, I mean, and so it's a benchmarking type tool so that we ask the same questions. If we change those questions, then we can't kind of look at how we did last year and how we did to other utilities. So the majority of the questions on these surveys are the same every year. All right. Now, what we have done is we have changed a little bit the question about, renewable energy, how, because we've kind of massaged, how, we get answers that don't make a lot of sense. So we ask follow-up questions and that sort of thing. So we have changed over the year, and we've asked questions that pertain to the particular thing that we're doing. Like last year, we asked a question about AMI because we were issuing, we were out there and we asked them how they felt the AMI installation went. There was a lot of people out there that, were worried about the accuracy of the new meters and that sort of thing. So we asked some questions and we got some results on that particular question. So how do we determine the questions? What we do at the beginning of the survey, and, this was last fall, we kind of say, and this is what I'm saying is as the right time is not a week before the survey to say, well, geez, I want to change the survey question because that's been done, a while ago. But as we look to those new ones, if you all want to be involved in setting those questions, particularly these other surveys that we don't have a lot of guidance on, would be more than happy to take your questions and review them and get those survey results.
And this current survey that's being issued, we'll see those results, correct?
Right. You'll get those, I think, in January, probably. I mean, it doesn't take them long to finish the survey and produce the reports. I think it'll be in January, February, you'll get the report. And that's what we've done every year. So if you look at January, February's historical packets, which we have them all, we can provide, kind of. And so what we try to do is benchmark going forward. And that's where we really, we've really focused on this, open and transparent question, because what happened is we were off the charts. I mean, we were literally off the charts in positive results for being open and honest. And over the last couple of years, we've taken a killing on it because, for the most part, they've gone down. Now, our goal is to get those open and transparent numbers back up by, working positively to get them back up. So we're looking forward to seeing if what we did in the last 6 months or whatever is improving those numbers, because they tanked in last year's report. And so what's that?
It was not an outlier. There's reasons that happened, but I think that we can address some of those reasons.
Well, I think it was a lot of people were saying that we weren't open and honest. So that was reflective in the report. So, but what I'm saying is the year before and the 4 years previous to that, we actually had very, very good ratings. So the outlier was last year. It was not the previous years, and hopefully we'll get back to where we were before. That's what our goal is.
So Todd and Andrea, how about we recommend that, when we review the survey results in February, we can talk about inputs on those two other surveys, since they're.
Yeah, and you may want to see those, and you might see some things that concern you and ask some follow-up questions on. I think.
Sound good for the two of you?
And I think there's some very ways to coordinate with Great Blue to do this. Even I know a lot of people pay their bill automated, but there's ways to collect data from people that doesn't need to be quote unquote scientific. We bill people, that's our output to them, and they give us an input of a check, and they give us back a piece of paper or they have to log in and they have to look at their bill and they have to put in their credit card number or whatever. And there's splash pages that you can use that can pop up on top of a bill before they pay it. Or you can put, a question or two, the same way that when you're at Myers, they ask you very carefully, how was your experience? Was the store clean? It's not onerous. It doesn't have to be scientific. It can just be a very easy way, even if Great Blue is not involved, to get our finger on the pulse of how our ratepayers feel. Even if we don't use it, even if we say, okay, this is probably just crazy, there's ways we can do this affordably that could actually help us to get input from people.
Thank you, Andrea. Dave, do you have what else did you said you had a few
Okay.
other things?
The other, the other thing is I just want to report on quickly, as quickly as I can do this. We had if you didn't know, there's about 150,000 customers in the consumers energy territory around us that are without power right now. I think we're down to 10 or so, 0. Okay, we're back to 0. Our guys have been working overtime over the last several days. I think it's important just to recognize them. But one of the things that we do, and we don't talk about that much, is mutual aid. And what that means is when we get everybody back on here, oftentimes, particularly at other municipalities or that sort of thing, our guys are called upon to go help somewhere else. And if we need their help, they come and help us out. Over this past weekend, Lansing had a situation, and I included in your packet a email from Lansing. I also got a direct phone call from their general manager yesterday, thanking us for the efforts of our 2 crews that we sent over there. Lansing had probably one of the worst single events that I've ever seen on an outage, is they actually had a dual circuited line, it looks like 2 at least, that was sheared off in front of a train. And the train grabbed the wires and pulled them for like a mile, right? And just started pulling these poles down, and literally had every pole for, on this circuit for a mile plus ripped out of the ground by the train. So our guys responded with 4 other municipalities to that call for help. I think our guys performed admirably, and that's the response that you have there. But I can tell you that the response that I got verbally from their general manager yesterday in a phone call was a lot more thankful than even that. So again, I think the state is experiencing a lot of outages right now, and we are faring very well. One of our goals is to maintain reliability. We're not perfect, all right? We're never going to be, and I'm reluctant to ever say that we're doing better than our neighbors. But the bottom line is our reliability indices are improving substantially over the last 5 years, and we are making progress in that regard. And it's good to say that we're sending our people to other municipalities rather than them coming here. Now, does that mean we're never going to need that in the future? Of course not. But it's just another data point to say, I think we're headed in the right direction. The last thing is, I do think we wanted to talk, and we talked about this last month, the governance training that we had budgeted, put into the plan, and we actually solicited help. We are trying to schedule that governance training for September. And what happens or September for February, for February. And what's happening is the person that we want to schedule this training with is actually going to be in Zealand the day after our February board meeting and on that Saturday. So, right. So he's going to be actually in the area, Western Michigan, doing work for Zealand. And if we can take advantage of him being here, I mean, we're not going to save a ton of money, but I mean, at least we don't have to pay we could split the airfare, and that sort of thing, the expenses. And our goal would be then is to try to wrap a meeting that day before and maybe the morning, if need be, of the February board meeting, so that he can come here and then go to Zealand, and it would effectively, and he's doing some strategic planning in Zealand. So I think that would be a good plan.
The 16th or maybe half a day.
Yeah, so the 16th is the day before your meeting. We would like to, try to schedule this. Obviously, this is a work day, and we understand that we have more working people than we had before, but this would be kind of a full day event. If you want to try to do it on Saturday, then, that would be a different Saturday that we have to deal. But if we could do it the day before our board meeting, say in the morning and through lunch, and maybe end by 2 or 3 o'clock. And then if we want to do it, maybe a follow-up session or something before the board meeting, we could get a good and I think he's planning on a day to a day and a half of governance training. And that's what we're looking at. I guess with that, we just, response, if that can work for you or not work for you, if we need to look at other opportunity or other days, we're more than happy. This is your training, it's not ours. But I do think it would be valuable, particularly for the new board members. And this is something that maybe some of the older board members have had, like when they went to APPA events and that sort of thing. We try to get, training in that regard, but this is an on-site, more dedicated to you type thing that maybe, you'd get over time in other areas, but I think it's important, given the turnover that we had, to have this training.
Andrea and Dave, what are you looking for tonight? Just a commitment for the 16th, or just to look at our calendars?
If it doesn't work, tell us, we'll move it. If we would like to try to schedule that out. I mean, the guy that's doing the training is looking out and planning, and if this isn't going to work for us, then he'll put some other dates out there that we can propose. But
Todd, are you back from Florida by February 16th?
I should be.
Should be, okay.
Now, is this through Hometown Connections? I participated last year by Zoom. I think it'd be awesome actually to participate in person. That'd be.
Tim Blodgett did our strategic plan last year. Tim Blodgett is now retired, and we have used Steve Vandermeer as well from time to time. He is retired as well, but so basically Hometown is going through a kind of a turnover of people, but Steve is still kind of working as a consultant in retirement, doing these types of training events. So that's who it would be. And I don't know if you've ever met Steve or not, but he's a very talented guy. And he actually has a sister that lives in Grand Haven. So I think he enjoys coming here and seeing her and participating in these types of things. So he would be the individual that we would be, trying to get. Yeah, it would be through Hometown Connections. I mean, the billing would actually be through Hometown Connections, but he is a retired employee now of Hometown.
And if I can add on to that, Todd, this isn't the same governance training you took by the online version.
Okay.
It'd be slightly different.
That was an APPA online.
It was
version.
APPA,
Yeah.
and this is
that was an APPA governance, training that they did, and we just piggybacked along with a bunch of other people that did it. This is a dedicated on-site training for our group only.
Well, still, the one that I participated in was unique, and I guess in the fact that there was so many people from various parts of the country, that were involved, and it was kind of interesting, to, I guess, just go through it with, many different states and different forms of municipalities and private. It was educational.
I think this one you won't get that dynamic, but you will get more direct, emphasis on maybe our situation. Hometown Connections, if you remember as well, also did our business readiness risk assessment and our organizational checkup and the strategic planning for the last 2 times. And Steve was involved in various aspects of that. So I think he's fully, very familiar with our organization and understands, some of the things that we do really, really well, and maybe some of the things that we don't do so well.
Jump me in.
Andrea, does that look good for you?
That date can work, yes. Especially, thank you for letting me know so far ahead of time. That's always important for me. But this would be my concern, and I don't mean to be heartless, because I'm really concerned about Jerry. My concern is that we don't really know how long it's going to be, and if Jerry is going to be able to reassume his seat. And if we schedule this and it turns out that Jerry makes the decision not to come back to the board, that we're going to have a new board member at some point, or that's possible. And I kind of would want to at least wait to commit until we've at least reached out to Jerry and figured out. I mean, I don't know if anybody's reached out to Jerry. I've wanted to, but I don't want to take any time away from his family. So I may just personally send a letter that has nothing to do with the board, but I am concerned that we're going to spend this money and then have a potential new board member, months after we do the training. So just something to think about. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but I just want to be wise about our time and our money.
Thank you for that, Andrea.
Maybe I can make a suggestion that if it is okay for the three of you, obviously Larry's not here either, but we can tentatively put it on the schedule, plan on it. I think you're right. We don't know what's going to happen with Jerry. I think at this point in time, he could be back. Maybe he's not back. At some point in time, we gotta go with who we have. And then, if we need to do a follow on, training or something like that, or get some of the governance training a different way, the way like Todd did last year with, virtual training through APPA. There is regular governance training that's being done. We wanted to, this actually was one of our, risks that was identified in our business readiness risk assessment. So we're trying to schedule it for the spring. If we find out that Jerry is either improving and by postponing it to March, we can get him involved. I think then we maybe we modify it, but I think Jerry is actually one of the ones that's probably attended more governance training in various aspects than, and he's probably been involved in a lot of this stuff before. So if he comes back, but you're right with the new member, if a new member replaced Jerry, then obviously we may or may not be able to know that by this time, and maybe we'll know more in January, February. But I would like to get something on the schedule, and then we can plan on it. And then if we need to change it, we'll change it.
Sounds good, Dave. Anything else from the general or from the
No,
other
I
business?
think that's plenty.
Right.
Mike,
Anybody else? Todd, sounds like you've got something.
I just want to point out, I didn't see, I don't have a copy of the agreed upon schedule for next year. I had the prior one, but not the one that was actually approved and in the minutes for next year's board meeting schedule.
I believe Renee is telling me that we put it on the website, so it should be on the website now. And
Okay.
I think the only change from the one you got was the time.
Right.
We can send it. We can send a revised one to everyone though.
I didn't, I just wanted to make sure when I plug them all in, I'll plug it in the right dates. But if it's on the website, I can find it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. I did have one other item on other business, and it was regarding public engagement. I think at our last meeting, we talked about having Eric Booth go out and do maybe a best practice and presenting to the board back for some ideas for improvement. I think we've kind of shifted gears a little bit when we were putting the agenda together this week, Dave. And I think our new approach is going to be maybe some board members can suggest and collaborate on some improved public engagement ideas and provide those to you guys in the future. So one item I did want to mention tonight, we had two opportunities for public comment. That was some feedback we got at a previous meeting that we actually implemented tonight. So we're going to have a second opportunity in a minute. The other item, it was we did move the time forward to 5 o'clock, which starts next week. Andrea, so sorry about that. I know you thought it was tonight, but we actually proved that for January. So I know that's another item that we implemented right away. One other item with the board packet readiness, Andrea and I and Todd's, we're all busy people, and having packets for the weekend to review for the weekend before a busy work week would be ideal if we could pull that off.
Okay, so I think I said this, and I think you're going to struggle, particularly with being on the third Thursday. All right, is if you try to move that up, a lot of times I get the accounting reports, Thursday, Friday before, I mean, I got these accounting reports last Thursday. And it's not just a matter of pulling all the stuff together. It's those reports that I think are, quite frankly, I think they're the most important thing in your board packet is, and what you saw this month is that we weren't able to give you the MPPA power supply report because I just got the bills for the summary bill invoice from last December today. So you start moving those things up, we can do it, but then there's going to be stuff falling off that is just not there. So we can do whatever you want to do. Our bylaws suggest, and this is what we've been doing for as long as I've been here, is 3 days before the meeting, we get the information out. So that's.
I think the struggle, Dave, is with, both Andrea and I have full-time jobs. I mean, other people are busy. I mean, 3 days isn't maybe adequate, enough time to have the information to properly look at it and get ready for a board meeting. So if we can bump that up to close of business on Friday, I don't know, Andrea and Todd, how you feel about that?
I think
almost a necessity.
I think you'd be better off then, if that's what you want to do, is to postpone the board meeting to say the fourth Monday. And then that would give us.
Why financial reports is that something that administratively you can adjust? Where do these come from that they're not done until that day?
Well, we have to close the books from the previous month on, like, the balance sheet is as of, the end of the month. So it takes several days to close all of it, get all the accounting information from the system, pull it all together and make the accounting reports. The same thing is on all the expense side. So you move it up, that's fine. We'll move it up, but then you're going to have less. I mean, you're going to have a lot of, and we do this at MPPA. All right. Is we actually at MPPA, we get the financial reports 2 months previous at the board meeting because we meet the second Wednesday. So there's no possible way to get the last month's financial information on the second Wednesday because you can't close the books and get all of the reports that quickly. So what we always do is we're always operating at your board meeting 2 months before. Now, the problem with particularly some of these, purchase orders and stuff that we're trying to get through. I mean, when do I get those?
I typically approve a lot of these purchase orders. They come through Dave and we try to get them to him Thursday, a week in advance. Because we're going out, we're having to get things quoted, so on and so forth. Could we move some of that up? Probably a little bit, but it will create a hardship.
And so it is a function of the closer you get to the board meeting with the board packet, the more information relative to that board meeting we can put in the packet. Now, quite frankly, I can give you a board packet 2 weeks in advance if that's what you want, but then you're not going to have all of the most relevant information that we can put into that report. If in lieu of it, the board packet that I put together will be entirely representative of how far it is away from that board meeting. So the further you move it away from the board meeting, the less accurate or current the information is in the board packet as it relates to the reports. Now, and it also relates is what we probably do with some of this stuff is if they don't give me the invoices by the cutoff date, then it rolls that over into the next month, the purchase order.
We're talking about.
So we're trying to now, from my perspective, if you want all of the financial information, all of the most current stuff, the best way to do that is to do what city council does. And if you want it over a weekend, is they have their meetings on Monday, 3 business days before that. And this is actually set in the charter, is they provide the information on Thursday before the fourth Monday. Now, I can assure you on the first Monday with the Thursday before, they definitely do not have all of the financial information in that. So their financial information from the previous month, if they provide whatever they provide, is probably provided on the fourth Monday with the information going out on Thursday. Now, first and third. So the information, the financial information from the previous month is probably going out on that essentially third Thursday, right?
Yes.
For the Monday meeting. So I mean, from my perspective, if you want the data 3 days in advance, which is close to the meeting, then move the meeting to Monday. And then we,
Actually, Dave, if I could just provide some additional perspective on this. So the power supply report we gave you guys last month, because you were meeting at the end of the month, the information that goes into that, I just got today. So pushing it out further actually helps us out if the board ends up moving their board meeting out. It'd be tougher to get the information to you sooner, but if the board meeting was moved out a week, we could have that done for that. That's just one more example.
I'll do whatever you want. We don't care. All right. But I don't want, I don't want you to get a board packet because you want it sooner, that it doesn't contain anything. And I can only do what we can do. All right. So I think we are used to doing it this way, and it works even this month. And I tried to explain that over the weekend, is this month, the earliest that the third Thursday can be is the 15th. All right. So it's the 16th this month. So we were pushing accounting to get all of the information done and get to me so that we could get, the earliest, essentially one of the earliest days that we have. Now, if that third Thursday falls on the latest day that it can be, then I probably have less problems getting the board packet out the weekend before. So
Yeah,
I understand your concern. Now you understand mine. So tell me what you want to do. I don't care.
there's only 2 months when the third Thursday falls on the 15th. That's September and December. So yes, it's difficult, but the rest of them are usually the 20th, the 26th. We have those couple weird months where everything's pushed back anyway because of the APPA event, the 20th, the 18th. I think it's going to be a little adjustment, but we're all doing a little adjustments to do our job. We can look into Monday, but it seems like the easiest solution is.
Okay.
I don't think we have to have a decision made tonight, but I think, just some feedback.
I understand your concern.
It
You
came out
understand-
late on Monday, this week, and it was just, it didn't afford much time to look at the information
I mean, I'll tell you what,
in advance.
from my personal opinion, I've spent many Sundays in here because I don't get the information to me by Friday. So a lot of these board packets, to get them out on Monday, I spend the weekend here. All right. And most of this
Well,
stuff is
sending some emails and just focus the work then.
what's
the
that?
packet.
We missed
Maybe
that.
we could, on the long emails sent out to explaining things and just focus on getting it done.
I don't know.
I didn't say that.
I think a lot of time is spent sending long emails explaining things, and that probably takes a lot of time to write those emails.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe we can
So
on
it's-
the long email.
Well, when somebody sends me an email on Friday night at 5 o'clock, I got to respond to it 3 times during the weekend. It does take a lot of time. So I get it. I'm not complaining, Andrea. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you that actually moving it to Friday would be fine with me. I think the problem that's going to be is that you're not really inconveniencing me. You're inconveniencing all these people because they then have to get the information to me, so that I would much prefer it to go out Friday before the meeting. The problem is that most of the time I do not have enough information on Friday to put together the packet that I put together on Monday. So really what you're doing is you're condensing all of the work that somebody else is doing, not me. And so I'm fine getting it out on Friday if that's what you want to do. But I think what I'm going to then have just so you know, is I'm going to have people saying, I can't get you this information or this information that early in the month. And so then what I'll do is I'll just not put that stuff in the board packet and wait for the following month. So you're going to have more delays and more older information in your board packet, older purchase order requests, older stuff that we have waited for a month because we couldn't get it to you early enough in the month. That's all I'm saying. So if you want to change it,
What-
up to you. We work for you. We'll do what you tell us to do.
Go ahead, Andrea.
If I can't review things and I don't feel like I can do my due diligence to approve them, then I'll just have to vote no. And right now, we barely have a quorum. So then you'll be a month behind. And I don't want to have to do that. So I'm asking you to help me by doing that. January 20th is the next hearing, so you got some time. That's going to be a long lag time. So let's just make sure that happens.
Well, I mean, I'm interested on your opinion here too, Todd. I mean, it's a group, a group decision. I mean, I
think the bottom line, this is what I said, there's the
I
agenda.
I understand the impact to you guys, and I want to be sensitive to that too. I mean, we're not trying to
The agenda,
ruin your lives either. I mean, just afford us a little more time to look at the information before, with our work schedules and the busy schedules. Sometimes I know Andrea's got long work days on Monday. I mean, it's a tight time frame to review before the meeting. So
I think our point of the matter is, you know what? We take our direction from you. Your direction is written by policy, right? So we literally butchered your policy on agenda planning over the last week. Now, if you want to change it, fine, change it. Have a motion, put it in place. We will change the bylaws. But don't jump all over the staff for following the established, approved process. So change it. If you want to change it for next month, then direct us, have a motion, change us, and we'll do it. But we are following the rules that the board set.
Understood. Just, I mean, we're creating a little havoc for you guys, making life a little harder or easier on us. Andrea and Todd, what are your opinions on moving the board packet up till Friday? I mean, you think that's something that's necessary?
Well, this month, there's only 35 pages. So, and I don't have a full-time job. I had plenty of time to review, the board packet that I received the information on Monday personally. Now, I'd rather see something where if we have some of these special reports, some of them are 50, 60 pages. I mean, I've been to some board meetings where our agenda was 300-400 pages long. And I think that if some of that information could be given out on the Friday, that would give me plenty of time. But I can understand what staff is saying. And I think that I'd rather push the meetings to Monday if it was that important. I think I want to have the information current. So
I think we can commit to doing that. If we have a report, or like I said, we're trying to put together this environmental report. As soon as we get it, we can get that to you if that's what you'd like. I mean, and I think, we get compared to the city council quite a bit. I think what most people don't realize is the city manager does give a report to council on the off week. So everything that he provides to the city council is not in the board packet. He provides information regularly, not in the board packet. So we can easily start doing that. Particularly if you're on email, we can forward you, some of the information in advance of the board meeting. So it might not be in the board packet, but we can get it to you in advance and then resend it out, re-put it into the board packet so that it's there, for public distribution, but if you want it earlier and we have it, I'm more than pleased. And I think staff would be too, is if we got a 100-page report or something that we're going to talk to the board about, and we get it 3 weeks in advance, we'll get it to you as soon as we can. when we know it's going to be on the next board report. And we do try to do that with a lot of the items is we put it on the agenda for discussion 1 month, and we may not act on it for 3 months. So, I think that's the other thing that everyone has to realize is very, very seldomly do we send a board packet out on Monday with major decisions that you have not discussed before that you're going to have to act on Thursday. That just doesn't happen. So, I mean, in this particular item, everything we talked about here, there's nothing on this agenda that we, with the exception of the reports that, you haven't seen before in some fashion.
I do think that part of the problem in the past was hard copies. I mean, if the board can make a commitment to, receiving some of this information by email, I think that would make it easier on everybody.
Well, Todd, we don't have that commitment, so we can't do it. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, we're dancing around something. We have a board chair that's not on email. He doesn't want it. He's made it very clear he's not going to be on email, and we need to deal with it. So if this is a board thing, it's not staff.
No, I understand that, Dave. But if we can get some information out on that Friday, or like you said, you could get a lot of this information out by electronic mail, I mean, can we come to a compromise like that? I mean, for me anyways,
I can make that commitment without changing the board packet distribution. I'll just try to get information out to you more often and more. And to the extent that there's a report or a letter or something else that comes online, if you don't want me to wait for that letter until the board packet goes out, we will send it out between board packets. And I think that happens regularly in other boards and commissions in the city. We have historically saved that letter for your board packet, save that piece of information for the board packet, and you typically only get one piece of information. Now, with email, if everyone was on email, I can just send you stuff. I mean, but I mean, it's a lot.
We've got to be careful what we ask for here.
I'm talking about
necessary stuff.
I'm talking about stuff that would normally be in the board packet. We'll put it in the board packet again, when we actually, and it doesn't take any more paper or anything like that. We can just get those things out to you earlier if we have it earlier. So that would allow you then to at least review those items that we have earlier at an earlier date.
My problem too with dropping to the following Friday is that would be on the same time as the city council meeting. And that would make, we usually go longer than 2 hours. So even if we started at 5, we would be overlapping city council. And I think that both boards jointly care about what's going on each board. So I don't want to have 2 meetings going on at the same time where we can't hear from each other.
Yeah, what Renee is saying, they meet the 1st and 3rd. We could meet the 4th, or we could meet on a Tuesday, 3rd Tuesday, if you wanted to do the day after. I mean, there's a lot of options. I'm just saying that changing the board delivery date is more difficult than changing the actual date of your meeting, as far as I'm concerned. Moving it up, moving your board meeting back would provide you more opportunity to, and you can talk about whatever date that is. I just threw out Monday. It could be the 4th Monday. It could be the 3rd Tuesday. Could be the 4th Tuesday. I mean,
well, couldn't we still just make it the 4th Thursday? Because that gives you plenty of time.
Yeah, that would be great.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we agree on you sending out information that you feel is going to, that is going to be in an upcoming board packet? Why don't we agree to do that? I think talking about changing days and everything, I'd like to get full boards and I'd like to get full board
I agree.
involvement in that. Why don't we keep things the same for now? Have you send that information out? Do we need to make a motion for that, or is that something we can just?
No, if you're staying with the existing procedures,
let's just stay with that for now. If we do want to change something in the future, we'll let you know.
I would just point out as well is too, if anybody wants to add agenda items to the agenda or add material to the board, the way that works is the chair and the general manager look at it, whatever time, if it's a week in advance or whatever. Right now it's set up for the Friday before. The chair meets with us and I put together what I think. And if there's items that the board wants to add to the agenda, they send that stuff to the chair. And then the chair puts it on the agenda. I don't. All right. So, I put onto the agenda what I think needs to be there. And then the chair puts on what the board wants to put on the agenda. So, sending me stuff that you want on the agenda is not per the procedures, and it's not typical of most governmental entities. The chair puts the stuff on the agenda. And if you want something on the agenda, additional information, you don't have to get the chair's permission. You just got to give the request to the chair. That's how it works. So, and
Understood. We talked about that a lot last week. So I guess one other thing I wanted to mention under other business was to recognize the changes that you guys made on the website to the environmental. Eric, I'm not sure if you're still online. I know, Andrea, you had just pulled that up when you were looking for some information. It is a lot clearer. It's bucketed a little nicer. I mean, the dates are nice and chronological. I mean, those PFAS results are, there's only 4 items in that, 4 or 5 items in that section. So, I don't think it's exactly the what's new thing kind of we talked about or asked for people navigating the website, but it's a huge improvement.
good. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. If you guys got other suggestions, feel free to toss them our way. We don't want things to be difficult to find.
I think still it's nested under About Us, and it still says, I don't want to be always critical. I don't mean that. You guys, this is really helpful, but it still says CCR environmental compliance, which I understand that there's regulations from the state that you have to have. But again, to the regular Joe, they're like, hey, I got to find this. They're not looking under About Us for reports in CCR environmental compliance. It's still,
I believe
gotta
it's
find-
just under environmental compliance, isn't it? Oh, okay. So, all right. Well, we have to put CCR in there. So that's, so we tried to make it as generic as we possibly can so that people can understand that they're looking for environmental compliance. They should be.
A big part of it is finding out what's new. You go through and there's, rather than scrolling down a whole page and searching for 2021 December, it seemed to be a little easier to navigate. And hopefully, we'll ask around to get some feedback. Andrea, if you get some feedback, or Todd, to share with Eric, I think that'd be good if we have ideas to make it simpler or easier, or I think that would be definitely worth hearing. I don't have anything else under other business unless Andrea or Todd.
there was a couple things that came up from people. I didn't mention this because we passed the consent agenda and approved it, and I didn't really think about the fact that the meeting minutes were in there. Our meeting minutes say that we ruled out the community center because it was too big, and I think that was actually supposed to be too small. Is consistent with the report that came out from Progressive A&E.
Are you talking about meeting minutes?
Yes, from the 29th. I don't think, I don't know procedurally if we actually go back and change it now.
Well, that's what we're
But
supposed to do when we approve the minutes. So if there's changes to the minutes, when we approve the minutes, that's when the appropriate time to change it. But if we didn't bring it up, then we can change. What is the change that you want to make to the minutes?
The minutes state that the community center was ruled out because it's too big.
Okay,
But the report, in reference to the report, in reference to comments from Progressive A&E, because the ideal situation was the 7,000 square feet building, and in fact, the Progressive A&E right to community is 3 and some change. Obviously, there was some discrepancy there that wasn't actually right, but the actual report that we talked about and the, you know, the presentation from Progressive A&E, it was stated that the community center was ruled out because it was too small.
Get it.
In the middle, it states that the community center was ruled out because it's too big and because the BLP didn't want to lease.
Well, it
Okay.
says leasing's not a good, I'll fix that, Andrea.
And we will
Okay.
assume that the board would approve of that change, because now we're changing the minutes after you approved them. I'm assuming
know.
Todd and Mike and you all feel that that's fine. So again, the appropriate time to do it. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm just saying, why do we approve the minutes if we knew that there was something wrong with it? But so I mean, that's the appropriate time to change the minutes when. So is there another change to the minute, Andrea?
Minute that were previously approved and make an amendment to that language as stated in my last statement. Is that appropriate?
We're just changing it. And if you have another change, why don't we just change it and then we'll concur that those changes are okay. So what, do you have another change to the minutes or is that the only one? Okay.
That was it.
So I think we have consensus that those changes do not adversely change our previous approval and they're still approved.
All right, and anybody else, any other other business from anybody?
This is the last one. There was some concern about our order of doing things in the last meeting, that we called to order the meeting after we elected a chair and a vice chair.
Yeah,
I
Andrea,
can't exactly.
I'll answer that one. So I think when we get a full board back in January or February, we can just recall the vote. Just repeat that process then, right? Right,
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, this was brought to our attention. I'm not sure I agree with we in our bylaws, we address following Robert's rules. All right. We are not required by our bylaws to follow Robert's rules, but it is right under Robert's rules. You're not supposed to do anything before someone calls the meeting to order. I think the board was acting as it felt was under a official action. I don't think any of the board members felt that they were not acting as part of the meeting when they acted. So I think it's a stretch to say they didn't call themselves to order, but they did not say the words, "We call the meeting to order," until after they voted. Now, the difficulty is there wasn't a chair or a vice chair present. So someone other than the chair or vice chair should have called the meeting to order before you voted. That did not happen. So the right way to do this is if there is a concern out there that you did not act according to your bylaws, which your bylaws do not require you to follow Robert's rules. But if you want to make sure that this is correct, I think what Mike and we wanted to talk to Larry about it, is the best way to do this is just have another vote at some point in time when y'all are present and do the vote after you've called the meeting to order. And there will be no question that in this regard. Now, do I think you did not appropriately elect someone? I don't really think that way, but to alleviate any doubt, we probably should redo it again, just to, suggest that others that felt that wasn't appropriate, that it is appropriate. So rather than argue about it, it's best just to do it over again.
I think the charter does address it, so I think we need to follow the charter.
This isn't a charter issue. It's a Robert's rules issue.
But the charter addresses the election of chair and vice chair. I don't want to get into it. Neither of us are lawyers. Why don't we make sure we pay a lot of money for lawyers? I just looked at all the money we pay for lawyers. Let's make sure we're checking that.
If you want me to ask an attorney whether violating Robert's rules negates an issue. It does not in our case because we have not adopted Robert's rules. If you read section 20 of the bylaws, it allows the board to determine whether or not they're meeting their own rules. And it kind of gives a recognition of Robert's rules, but not a requirement that you follow them. So in this particular instance, you did not follow Robert's rules. You did not break the law.
So if everybody's okay with it, when we have a full agenda, we will just go through the motions of re-voting again. What's that? A full board, excuse me. We'll go through the motions of doing the elections over again, if that's okay with you, Andrea and Todd.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's, you know, if somebody took a concern with it and has a concern about, you know, something, it's something that we can address and we can do, why wouldn't?
Right. I agree.
Okay, anything else under other business? Right? So this is the point in our meeting, we're going to have our second public comment period. This is a second of two opportunities to hear comments from the general public. Please remember to provide your name and address for the record. Again, use the raise your hand feature under the reaction options in the bottom right portion of the screen. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and Rob will be the timekeeper. So we'll open it up for comments at this point. All right, down to 5 attendees and no public comments. So with that, can we get a motion to adjourn the December board meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the December board meeting.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Renee,
Have
call
fun
the-
in Arizona. You guys have a good.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Hendrick.
Yes.
Director Westbrook.
Yes, meeting adjourned.